Coming at you live from all over Ohio. A Cleveland Browns podcast full of laughs, rants, fun, and stats. A place where all Browns fans' voices are welcome and heard. A show that aims to inform and entertain you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Barking Browns Show.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. It is episode 91 of the Barking Brown Show. I'm your host, Jacob at Roaches13, joined by Mr. Nick Carnes at Carnesies817. We are brought to you, as always, by our friends over at Homage Apparel. Nick, how are we tonight?
I am happy, Jacob. I'm happy. We have a new defensive coordinator. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, like what happens with Cleveland Browns hype in the offseason. Because it's starting already. It's starting already. I'm already talking myself into all kinds of great things. So it's a great night to be a Browns fan. It's a great night to be here. Thank you for everybody who's already. I see we've got people right there with us every week. It's amazing that you guys are. As Jacob mentioned, we are partnered with the wonderful people at Homage. We've got NFL Jam. We've got NBA Jam. There's what's not to love. There's soft.
Go head over to our Twitter. We're giving away 3 NBA Jam t-shirts.
3 of them. And I just want to say to everybody, because we've talked about this a bunch. We've been on our YouTube quest to get to 1,000 subscribers. Mm-hmm. We just hit 900, in no short of credit to the guy over there to my right, and our other great friends, Zach and Tyler, and everybody at 216 that's been working hard on it. So thank you all for your support. It means the world to us. We can't wait to get there. Might have a giveaway. We already
Feels
are.
Feels like it. Hey, if you're new here, thank you. Welcome. I'm sorry. Hit that subscribe button. Give this thing a little thumbs up. I appreciate it. Andrew checking in, giving me a happy birthday. Thank you. It is my birthday. I'm 32. It is Jacob's birthday. 32, the big 32 today. We got all kinds of awesome things. We're going to talk about Jim Schwartz. Obviously, kind of one of those pivots where I was like, we're going to talk about all these defensive coordinator candidates. And then we end up, going ahead and just getting one of them, which is like, okay, that's great. That's what we wanted. Let's go from there. And I'm going to talk about some cap casualties. I wrote a quick cap casualties piece over at Browns Wire, if you want to check that out. Lots of things going over multiple things a day coming from me over at that website. If you're interested in that, you can go check that out. We'll talk about those 3 cap casualties that I highlighted and kind of where that puts the Browns roster overall and that sort of thing. We have a super special top secret segment coming in about like 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so, like 8:30, 8:35, about halfway minute mark, in which it's going to get a little funny and a little weird. And I hope a little entertaining, but and then maybe we'll make some playoff picks at the back end of the episode. But I think this is a good place to start and kind of, it's the hot button topic, so to speak, right? So I think we're going to start tonight with defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz. We're going to go through some of the numbers, rankings, information, some schematic stuff. We're going to go through all of that stuff. So we're going to start here. I'm going to start with the numbers. So let's go by the numbers. Let's talk about Jim Schwartz as a defensive coordinator. Start with the numbers, break those kind of down. We'll talk about schematic fits and that sort of thing. I tweeted out on Twitter that, yes, I do believe it was an absolutely home run of a hire. I think it was I just think it was a really good hire, and I'm very happy with it. So let's talk about his last 6 seasons as a defensive coordinator. So he was the head coach in Detroit. He gets fired as the head coach. He spends 1 year in Buffalo, then takes a year off and spends 5 years with the Eagles. And then he was just a senior defensive assistant with the Titans this year. So in points allowed, this is where I always go to total defense. I always think to myself, when I'm talking about a defensive ranking, I want to know about the points allowed. So Jim Schwartz in 1 year plus the 5 years in Philly, here are his points allowed starting in Buffalo in the ranking defensively. 4th, 12th, 4th, 12th, 412, 412. Okay, I didn't even notice that in the first time. 15 and 20. So you're talking the worst season he had in his last 6 years as a coordinator was top 20 in defense. Nick, I asked you this top 20 in points allowed. I ask you this. If the Browns were top 20 in points allowed this year, do you think they would have won more football games?
I certainly do, Jacob.
So that's where we start, right? We start there. We say, yeah, okay. So you're talking about a guy that in 5 of the last 6 years he was running a defense that were top 15 in points allowed. And then, 4 of those years, top 12. I will take top 12, top 15 in points allowed in defense every single year. So I'm not saying he's going to be the best defensive coordinator in football. He might not even be the best defensive coordinator in the AFC North, but he is going to be a drastic improvement. So let's start schematically. Let's talk about a couple things schematically, and then we'll get your overall thoughts, Nick, as well. You're going to talk about this wide 9 scheme. You're going to hear this brought up a whole bunch. That's what he likes to do, is run this wide 9. And basically, he likes really wide defensive lines. So typically he does run, more. He does run more of the 4-3. He was like one of the only 4-3 candidates they were actually interviewing, which was kind of interesting because I was wondering. But the edge players typically line up wide of the tackles, not on top of the tackles or inside of the tackles. They quite often are outside. What that does do is it puts a heavy burden on the defensive tackles. So they're going to need a drastic improvement at defensive tackle if they are to be effective and run Jim Schwartz scheme, which I think they were going to give you a drastic improvement, period. Like, I think they were going to go out and just redo this room no matter who it was, but you really need to redo this room based on who Jim Schwartz is as a coach. But what is fun, people are going to get mad if they see his blitz rate. He does not blitz that often. You're not going to get a whole bunch of cover zero Greg Williams style blitzing that makes you want to rip your hair out. But you're going to get pressure. Jim Schwartz excels at defensive line play and manipulation to produce pressure. There was a former, if you go over on the Browns Wire, Corey Kinnan wrote something up about a former Browns defensive tackle that has played in Jim Schwartz system, who literally was like, Myles Garrett's going to destroy people in that system. Like, he is able to manipulate offensive lines in such a way that his front 4 get pressure at a ridiculous rate, and that is what he hangs his hat on. That does result into some man coverage on the backside. He does love to run a lot of man coverage. You're finally going to get that, Browns fans. He's finally going to give us what we need and, need and want. I will pull those numbers up in just a second, but you're talking about a guy that is creative. You know what? That's all I'm going to say. The only word we've asked for in the last couple of years is be more creative, and that is 100% what Jim Schwartz is.
You know what? I think some of the knocks on the Browns previously is that what they were doing is being telegraphed, and if the opponent knows what you're doing, it's obviously an issue. So, I'm echoing. Oh, no, I'm not echoing. Okay, we're good. When you talk about Jim Schwartz creativity and you talk about getting pressure from the defensive line, that's everything that the Browns have been lacking, right? Because I think even Joe Woods' system would have been far better off if you were getting pressure from that front 4. Yeah, and you just weren't this last year. Outside of Myles Garrett, and when Jadeveon Clowney was playing, he was okay at it. But when your defensive tackle room is basically devoid of anybody generating pressure, that's an issue. So a lot of the history with Jim Schwartz has been with significant difference-making defensive tackle play. And I tweeted about this yesterday, taking all the playoff games in, one of the things that was just so different between all those teams and what I watched with the Browns all year were those defensive tackles. You saw impacts. I can't go down the list of names, but regardless of what game you turned on,
go watch DJ Reader. Just go watch DJ Reader of the Bengals. Just watch it.
Absolutely. And so that's my point, is it's a key piece that the Browns didn't have to begin with. And obviously it's all the more important now with Jim Schwartz being your defensive coordinator. So I think that, and a lot of people have said this already, but that indicates that the Browns are going to also invest heavily in defensive tackle, which I think is good news, because that's something we've all wanted. And so I'm really excited about that. And just, you know what, I haven't looked at the numbers. I couldn't imagine the last time the Browns were top 10 in points allowed. And when you talked about Jim Schwartz and some of his rankings, right, there were multiple top 10 finishes or near, right? It's 4-12.
I can't remember
imagine
the last
Browns
time they
saying-
were like top 15 in points.
Honestly, right? Because even in 2020, the Browns weren't a good defense. They just forced a ton of turnovers, which
And they
masked.
scored a lot.
Yeah, and they scored a lot, so it put the opponent in, but so it masked their deficiencies. But so that's my point: is imagining the Browns having a legitimately good, stout defense has me salivating. That's
So-
where I'm at, Jacob.
So we called for man coverage, right? That's what they need to be doing. Why aren't the Browns man coverage? The last 4 years, this is Jake Burns tweeted this out, and I knew I had seen it today. That's why I went looking for it while you were talking. The last 4 years that he was in Philly, this is the NFL ranking in usage of man coverage. 8th, 17th, 7th, and 5th. So he will put those corners out there. You do need players that can play man coverage, and that is the strength that AB has, accumulated through draft picks and through free agents and things like that. That man coverage is where a lot of our defensive backs are able to. It's their strength. It's where they flourish, that sort of thing. And you're going to put him in that situation, and you're going to see a lot of really creative wrinkles in the way that he brings pressure, the way he simulates pressure, which is always interesting because you don't necessarily have to bring crazy exotic blitzes, and you don't even have to blitz at all. You can be creative and manipulate some things, and that's just he's made a living on defensive line play. And being as good as anybody in the business. Like you talk about, Bill Callahan, what he's done with offensive lines, I think it's probably safe to say that's what Jim Schwartz does with defensive lines. And I think that you're looking at some really nice pieces in the front of this defensive line and front seven. And I think what he could do with JOK behind it, I really like what he could do back there. But I think you see the numbers, you see a guy that regularly is in the top half of the league in terms of points allowed and usually in total defense and things like that. So top half, I think he's a top half of the league coordinator. You went from a bottom 5, probably bottom 10, bottom 5 coordinator to a top half of the league. And that's just a drastic change. And I think you're going to see that almost immediately for the Cleveland Browns.
I'm so excited about that too, because you know what, when you talk about Jim Schwartz, obviously with Joe Woods, there was a lot of ties, like being a specialist with secondary, which, I mean, you can only pick and choose. But when the Browns' greatest weakness is the defensive line, and you talk about Jim Schwartz and emphasizing the defensive line, I think that makes so much more sense, because if that front four isn't getting better, the defense is never going to reach the dreams for being a top 15, 10, in that 12 to whatever range. They're just not going to get there.
Well, and they've had the talent. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing, is that we realize that they've had some talent, and maybe some of that talent was over exaggerated, I think, going into this season. But my point remains that there was more talent than what the record and the defensive rankings said. And a lot of that has to do with, at times, there were some creative, well-called games that resulted in some games where we went, oh no, is Joe Woods figuring it out? We had this conversation again this year like we did last year. And especially when, the level of quarterback play kind of took a step down as well, we saw some of those things as well. But I think that this is a coach that understands the way to utilize his players' strengths and weaknesses. I think he can accent those things. I think he can hide some of your weaknesses. I think he can scheme up a lot of really fun stuff. And I think it adds up just to a much better situation with a coach that, I mean, he's got a track record, is my point. And I wanted somebody that could really command a room and command respect. And I think that's what they got. And that's no knock on any of the other candidates, because I kind of like pretty much all of them. I would have been okay with all of them. But once Mayo was off the table, Schwartz was my original set number 2 when I did the rankings last week on Browns Wire. I had done all 6 of them, and that's what Schwartz was, number 2. And I think you got a former head coach. He can help with that sort of stuff. He was a head coach in a place that's not it's every bit as hard to coach in as what
Yeah.
Cleveland is when he was in Detroit for several years. And I said this as a joke because I don't think this is actually a big deal, but it is to some fans. And let me say this before I say that. I've never seen Browns Twitter quite agree on a move like they did Jim Schwartz. There, of course, there's haters. There's plenty of them.
Yeah.
They're like, this is bull, But oh my God, I posted something. I posted I love this hire. I think it's a home run. I absolutely love it. That sort of thing. I didn't even get any hate on it. I just got some likes and some comments. I was like, oh, yeah, that's pretty crazy. But people say, that they think Stefanski should show more fire and more passion. And while I think I don't think that matters. Overall, I don't think that matters. Just remember, the last time somebody wanted to act a little froggy with Jim Schwartz, that was Jim Harbaugh, and he tried to fight him. So that is a thing. If you're looking for a fiery, excited coach with a lot of energy, and Jim Schwartz will bring that too.
You know what? Browns Twitter has the video of that. It was in 2011.
Yeah.
I think. And it was a big game because the Lions entered that game they were 5-0. The 49ers were 4-1, and the 49ers won on a last second field goal. And Harbaugh gave a really half-assed handshake is my memory of it. And the video was circulating around Twitter, but it was actually I called my dad today when the Browns announced that hire because he really likes Jim Schwartz, and it's also his birthday. So happy birthday to him and you, Jacob. But my dad was the one who remembered that happened. I completely forgot about it, and he brought it up to me. So then I posted on Twitter, and then Manny and a bunch of other people post the video, and then before you know it, all the Browns Twitter's talking about Jim Schwartz and being fiery and being ready to fight. So that was really cool to see, and I do agree. You know what? Maybe, and Jacob, I hear what you're saying in Kevin Stefanski's emotions and how that shouldn't matter. But I do think it helps to have different personalities and different styles of leadership on your team. I think that's a piece that, everybody's talking about it nonstop. And I've learned from a lot of the stuff that happened in the last regime and the last time that when there's whispers and rumors about, this is not going on or this is happening and the Browns are lacking this, I take it with more than a grain of salt than I used to. And so if they're saying that the Browns are lacking fire, if they're lacking leadership, if they're lacking that type of stuff, I feel like Jim Schwartz perfectly fits what you're looking for in that regard. So, and so I'm all the more excited about the hire because of that. And so we'll see where things go. But it feels good today.
It does feel good today, and I know that we would have probably talked ourselves into a lot of the other candidates or anybody that had really been able to get the job if that was the case. But you look at Schwartz and you think that's the first guy they interviewed, which implies he was towards the top of their list. A lot of people said, a lot of people had said they were interviewing the first two, which was Schwartz and Flores, for a reason in that order. And in the end, that's where it goes. And, Flores is doing all these head coaching interviews. It is probably likely to end up, I think he ends up in Arizona. I think if you're trying to ask me to make a pick right now, I think Brian Flores will end up in Arizona. So I don't think it was ever going to necessarily be Cleveland because I think he's going to go be a head coach somewhere in Arizona. But we talked about this in the season. I talked about it multiple times when I said that I just really wanted a proven leader.
Yeah. Because
one thing that I noticed and this is the thing that I think could get changed and reshaped with the team and the roster moving forward is I think there's some personalities and some attitudes in there where there was a lot of players that are maybe not necessarily cancers in the locker room, but players that were hard to get through to. And Joe Wood's style of approach just wasn't working. And so you went with a dude that not only is a total 180 in terms of attitude and approach when it comes to the way he coaches defense, but a guy that, can say, hey, look, I won a Super Bowl. They win the Super Bowl in 2017. He was the 4th ranked defense in the NFL. And they won a Super Bowl off of that with Nick Foles against Tom Brady. I mean, and I know that Carson Wentz starts that year in that just awesome tear, but you can't tell me you don't want a top 5 defense. I mean,
No.
top 5 defense right there. It made sure that Nick Foles finished the job, and he was really good in the playoffs. Nick Foles was really good in the playoffs, but you had Jim Schwartz on the other side guiding this defense, and here we are. And we get to this point where it's like, this is a guy with a proven record. He has everything. He checks all the boxes that everybody complained about. He's got the leadership style. He's got passion. He's got fire. However much that you think that matters, whatever, I don't care. But he's got it. Whether you think it matters or not, it's there. So you can at least say, yeah, that's there. And it's just. I think he is the guy that is going to put the talent that is already there in positions to succeed even more. And he's going to be able to hide some of the weaknesses. And I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis on defensive line in free agency, as well as I think some draft picks. But I think, I don't think Daron Payne, I want Daron Payne so bad, but I just don't think he gets out of there. And I don't know if they want to pay what he's going to cost, even if he does get out of there. But I wrote a piece for Browns Wire that, it's either coming out later this evening or it comes out tomorrow, and it talking about 3 guys that I really think that he could bring with him from the Titans. And I can kind of actually talk a little bit about those guys real quick, just because I've got it written right here. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what he could bring over to try to run this wide 9, right? Okay. First off, he could bring Terrence Mitchell with him, which is awesome because Money Mitch could come back. I just kind of think that was funny. I didn't realize he was in Tennessee. I was just looking at their available free agents, and I was like, oh, crap. So I like this guy. So Teair Tart, and that's a defensive tackle, 6'2", 305 pounds, nice little compact, just really powerful player. Yeah, so 6'2", 304. This year he played 305 pass rushing snaps, 26 total pressures, 2 sacks, and a pass rushing grade of 75.9. Do you think the Browns had a defensive tackle anywhere 75.9 in pass rushing grade?
No, I do not.
Spoiler, they did not. I don't think he would be a starter, but you're getting me 75.9 pass rush grade and 300 snaps off the bench. Okay. Yep.
Maybe a starter right now on the Browns.
He's a 73.1 overall as a defensive tackle. Only played, I think, like 500 snaps. So Andrew Adams is really fun, a safety. He actually torn his patellar tendon just like Jack Conklin, and he did it week 17, so he may not, just like Conklin, start the season. But he finished with a 74.8 coverage grade in the back end. Wasn't great in run support, but if you're trying to add a deep free safety, which they've lacked, I think he can play that role off the bench. So that's cool. And you could get that. That's pretty cool. And DeMarcus Walker is the one I want. This is a defensive end. I think he could start opposite Myles Garrett as your starter, unless they make a big splash play elsewhere. 32 quarterback pressures and 8 sacks in 2022 with the Titans. He's a bigger, stronger, longer edge player, which is what they love. 6'4", 280 at defensive end, and that's what the Browns have loved, is those big, strong, long edge rushers, and that's something that he can bring. So I think those are 3 guys, and Andrew asked if he can get some good play out of Scooter. I think Perrion might actually be I think it's Myles Garrett, but outside of Myles Garrett, the players that may benefit the most from Jim Schwartz, Perrion Winfrey's got some tools, man. He's got some tools. We've talked about it. If there's ever a coach that can potentially get the most out of him, I think it might be Jim Schwartz.
I'm really looking forward to the defense knowing where to line up.
Well,
that's going to be pretty cool.
Well, that would be fantastic.
I mean,
hold on. You said, hey man, I think it'd be pretty cool if the defense knows where they're supposed to be.
It's a pretty low bar. It was still happening in week 17, so I don't really know how to quantify that, but it's the truth. And I, on a little bit of a more serious note, though, I am really looking forward to. It felt like for a long time that the Browns secondary was better suited to play man than it was zone, and I am really excited to see more hopefully more man coverage in this Browns defense, because I think like you've invested all these assets in the secondary, and I feel like they can shine so much more brightly when they're given the opportunity. Like that's why you drafted a guy like Martin Emerson. That's why you drafted a guy like Greg Newsome, and obviously Denzel Ward's there. And so I'm hoping that is what we've like. Obviously, they communicate and they know where they're supposed to be, which I think is very easily and obviously going to be fixed. But number two is that they're utilized differently, because clearly what Joe Woods was doing was not working. And so I am excited when we talk about the differences that Schwartz is going to bring to the table. I think that's why it's so important, because that I still do believe that there's a lot of talent, especially in that secondary, that just wasn't shining like we all had thought. And so I'm hoping that Schwartz utilizes them a lot better than Woods did.
Hold on. I'm getting a breaking news alert. What? Ow. Okay. All right. So apparently I have been fraternizing with people over at the Dog Chug.
Oh boy.
And I decided I was going to do my own. This is that you can skip ahead about like 5 to 10 minutes if you're listening to the playback of this and you don't give a shit about this. You can just go skip ahead if you want, because it's going to take me like 5-10 minutes here. I decided I wanted to do one of Roger's famous top 10s. Yeah. But in order to do that, I need a judge. So who better than Roger First himself?
Roger First, hello.
You gorgeous sons of bitches. What a sight for sore eyes the two of you are. Thank you for Nick, Jacob. Hello.
I miss you, Roger.
Nick, I miss you. I miss you like a third cousin.
Whoa.
I do. I do. Man, I love you guys. Thank you for having me.
We're glad you're here. Absolutely. This is my top 10. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's a top 10 reasons cereal is soup.
The top 10 reasons cereal is soup?
I've had a feeling.
I got him right here.
Roger's pouring the beer because he knows. He knows what this is about to be.
Number 10. Number 10. So soup is often called comfort food, right? Like you often you feel sick, you want some comfort, you want to feel good, hearty, filled up. You get some soup. Well, if you wake up hungover, perhaps the next day, and you're like, man, I don't feel so good. You know what's more comforting than a bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch? I don't know that there is anything. And you could even do some like cream of wheat. You should do some cream of wheat when you don't feel good. You use cream of wheat and drink your Sprite and you'll feel better. Yeah. Boom. Cereal soup. Number 9. It has a liquid base.
And Sprite?
Sprite. Yeah, Sprite makes you no, you don't put it in your cream of wheat. Sprite's what you drink when you're sick. So Sprite, cream of wheat, comfort food.
I would drink ginger ale.
Yeah, well. Number 9, it's got a liquid base. All right. It's got a liquid base. That's easy. Okay. Number 8. A variety of classic options in soups are served both hot and cold, and so is cereal. A variety of options, hot, cold, boom. There you go. That's number 7.
What is cold soup? Hey, what soup exists that's cold?
Just Google it. A lot of Mediterranean soups, a lot of Eastern Asian soups are cold and also made with milk as a base. Yeah, that number 7. Milk is the base of several traditional soups. All right. Okay. Number 6. I stayed at a Holiday Inn last night, so I'm qualified to say this. Number 5. My pediatrician says it was. No, I mean a doctor. I don't see a pediatrician. I'm an adult. I see a regular doctor.
I'm still stuck on cold soup. Like I can't. Like
Google it.
A bowl of cold.
Google it. Number 4. Number 4. YOLO. Number 3. Who cares what a dictionary says something is anyway? Fuck the dictionary. Right. Number 2. My mom said so.
It's a good one.
In number 1, it's my birthday. Let me have this.
Well, Well, Jacob, you did a hell of a job. You did you want to give people cream of wheat get sour their stomach with milk is a good idea. That way you can get everything out early in the morning and start your day and just gets a cleansing. I like that you go to your pediatrician still. It's hard. It's your birthday. So I'm gonna give you a 10 out of a 10 on it.
Woo! There we go. Roger,
the man himself.
Before
you got to get a cadence though. You got to get the cadence down a little bit more. I gave him an assignment yesterday, Nick. He didn't tell me what the topic was.
Okay.
But I said, watch some Letterman, watch me a couple episodes, and get it down. And I think he did a pretty good job.
Okay.
I appreciate it because I came to Roger with this idea yesterday, and I was like, hey, man, I need you to do this thing with me on Wednesday, and we're not going to tell Nick about it. And he's like, all right, man, let's do it. He's like, so, Roger, while we got you here, man, give me some thoughts on Jim Schwartz.
Well, you guys know I had it first. Jim Schwartz, no matter what.
You did.
It was basically because he has the experience. He's an ex-NFL head coach. And that's what Kevin Stefanski needs on that side of the ball. When you talk about his scheme, and you touched on it earlier, the wide nine, you got Myles Garrett coming. He's got a full head of steam. The offenses are forced to put a tight end out there because he's lined up on the outside shoulder of a tight end. You're not going to catch Myles Garrett with a running back with a 10-yard full head of steam coming after the quarterback, with a running back standing in the backfield. But it all centers on the defensive tackle room. If I was Jim Schwartz, I had a piece of paper with some names on it. If you hire me, this is who I want. You know why? Because he had Albert Hainsworth. He had London Fletcher. He had first-team All-Pros and Pro Bowlers playing the defensive tackle position for him. And in this scheme, their job is to make sure that the guards and centers don't get to the linebackers. JOK and Taki and Larry Walker, hopefully you get, I love Larry Walker. Mm-hmm. When they don't have offensive linemen pinning them down, they can make tackles. And that's, getting tackles, getting sacks is great for a defensive tackle, but their main primary job is to keep the offensive linemen from getting to the second level and let your playmakers, your linebackers, make the tackle and make the plays. And that's their job. And I don't think Jim Schwartz would have took this job without an idea of we're going to restock the front seven room. I love the hire. I wanted somebody experienced. I'd have been great, just as happy with Flores, but I think Jim Schwartz is never going to coach a head coach an NFL football team again. His stint in Detroit, he's a DC until he retires, and he's accepted that. And that's another big that came into play for me. Because look at he was on Baltimore staff with Mark Broda, and then he went to Jeff Fisher with the Titans and then on to Vrabel. And if you look at Dick LeBeau with Pittsburgh, he was there forever. We want a DC that's going to come in here that's a veteran, that's tough. And yeah, he wanted to fight Harbaugh. Right there's going to get everybody on board that hates.
It did.
He went to Georgetown, so that's like the hidden Ivy League. I think they call it the quiet Ivy League or something. Georgetown. I love the hire. It's a great hire. I can't say enough. And now I'm excited about the mock drafts when you do the tackles. So it's got me involved in some mock drafts in the free agency.
I love it.
Roger, I just want to compliment it. You've got the hat with the orange stripe going on. You've got Snoopy.
This is a fedora from Mike's Hats here in Akron. I won a $100 gift card from a podcast, a Browns podcast, and I can't remember the guy's name. He had like 3 people to ever listen to it. This is like 4 years ago now, and I used to listen to him in the Danger Zone, and that's when I met you. And he was giving away, and I listened to him all the time, and he drew my name. And I went there, and I'm looking at baseball, and I'm like, I want that fedora. It was a brown fedora. I said, could you put an orange ribbon around it? Man, the guy hooked me up. Look at that. Got a pin, got a feather.
Wow.
So it's on my special occasion hat, and I wore it tonight because I'm like Napoleon returning from Alba, coming back on the Barking Browns. I haven't been here in 18 months.
True.
So I dressed up. I wore my Ross to Sock Boss, got me this shirt. Wow. I got my Utah Give Me 2 homage shirt on, plugging some homage.
Absolutely.
But I put it all together for Barking Browns. I put it all together for you guys tonight.
We're honored, Roger.
It's a special occasion. I wore my fancy hat for you, Nick.
You know what? I'm honored. We're honored. I want to say, I floated the idea to Jacob, and I talked to Andy a little bit. Roger, you're next on the list. We got to get a mashup again. We got to get a mashup.
We do. And now that Dog Chug's member 216, and we've cooled our jets, and you guys will hang out with us again, and we. But we got to get it together. The holidays went by so fast. We never really got anything together. Maybe Network 216, Dog Chug, Barking Browns, and all of our podcasts get together and do a St. Patty's Day show. How about that?
Oh, yeah. I'd like that a lot.
I'm with you 100%. Roger, listen, man, I really, really appreciate your time hopping on here with me. We're going to let you, we'll let you go. But we're going to do this again soon.
Thank you,
all right,
Roger.
Guys.
I just want to say, MC Lawrence saw you, Roger. He's in the comments talking. He shouting out you. Thank you, MC. And you know what? We bring the big guests on. The big guests, Roger. That's
watch the ratings go through the roof for this week's Barking Browns. Folks.
There it is. Real big.
Already has, man. We love you, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Yeah. All right, I love you too. Good night, guys. Thank you.
Roger's the best, man. He really is. He's the absolute best. I love it. I came to him with this idea, and he was like, "Oh, hell yeah!" He's like, "I'm all in. Let's do it. Let's ride." All right, man. We're gonna shift gears a little bit as we get close to towards the end of the episode. Ended up going a little bit. I just wanted to have some fun, and I knew no other than Roger was the guy to have some fun with. So I got him on here so we could talk about some of this stuff. So I want to talk about 3 players that I put an article out talking about them being potential cap casualties coming up here soon. And for the Browns, one of them's kind of big names. 2 of them are guys that aren't quite as big of a name. One of which I know some people are not going to like. So these are guys that I think based on their cap hit and their almost non-existent dead money that are on their way out. Starts with offensive lineman Joe Haeg. He was signed towards the end of the preseason, I believe, somewhere in the training camp. Played some tackle, played some guard, some things like that with Pittsburgh. And he ends up actually signing like a 2 or 3 year deal, which was interesting because I thought he was just coming in to be an injury replacement. He's got like a 2.5, I think, million cap hit coming up. And if you cut him, he's got like a $2 million in cap relief savings. So where I think Joe Haeg, offensive line depth, is going to come somewhere else and free up $2 million in cash there. The next one's Jakeem Grant. I do not see the Browns ever having Jakeem Grant suit up for them. And that sucks because I think he was really primed to have a good year this year. Then you got the emergence of Donovan Peoples-Jones, who's finally put it together as a punt returner. Jerome Ford has been putting it together as a kick returner. So like you're looking at these things and you're like, these things that we brought this guy in to do, we actually ended up figuring it out. And he has a well over 2 million cap hit. He's over 30. He's going to be closer to 31 by the time he would ever play. He's coming off an Achilles tear, which quite often takes us 2 years to be fully back from. Yep. Right. And Grant Delpit. I mean, Grant Delpit took 1.5 years plus worth of actual play time after he came back because it was really halfway through this year before I think he really felt confident in going out there. And Jakeem Grant's a guy that cuts real violently. He's, a speedy little scat, like a slot receiver who has great acceleration, great speed. Is he going to have all of that at 31 coming off an Achilles tear? I just don't know. And if you cut him, you get $2.2 million in cap relief. And I just think you already have the guys that were going to do what he was going to do on the roster. I think they'll draft a slot receiver in day 2. So you see all of those things and you're like, okay, I think he gets cut. In the obvious one, Nick, post June 1 cut of John Johnson III.
Yeah. Yep.
You cut him post June 1, $9.75 million. Listen, loved it. Thought it was a home run signing. I did a meme. I saw this on my phone, dude. This is the funniest thing ever. I saw this on my phone the other day. Sometimes I like to go back and look at like all the old memes and stuff that I post on Facebook and just see how terrible some of my takes are. And so I go back and I'm looking at it and I see what you call it. Now I'm losing my train of thought. I put one of those like, that where that guy's sitting there and he's like, changed my mind. I put on there that John Johnson III is the greatest accusation with
acquisition.
Acquisition since 1999. I put it on there. I said that. I said it was the biggest free agent because I thought it was going to be leadership, all this stuff. He just,
Ooh.
I don't know, man. He doesn't look like he wants to be out there any more than I want to see him out there. And if you're going to free up nearly $10 million when you're a little bit salary strapped,
there's
bye.
Way too many examples of him. Just you just ask yourself, you're like, what are you doing? There's I'm not sure if it's effort or if it was some rift between him and Joe Woods or whatever. But I mean, it's impossible to ignore, and I'm really hoping that you are correct and the Browns will address that, because I mean, at this, I'm not saying it's wasted money. Like, he still made some plays, but I think overall it's one of those things where it's addition by subtraction. I think the Browns can get more value for less money than they are spending on John Johnson. And there's two ways to look at this. The Browns can create a lot of cap space, and it looks like they can make a lot of room. And so that's great. However, they still are in a position where every dollar, every million counts, which is kind of weird to say million count, but you know what I'm saying? So when you look at what John Johnson is giving you, I even with Schwartz coming in, and so maybe you could, on the other side of this, you could say, well, we're getting a new defensive coordinator in, maybe John Johnson could buy in there. I get that that's a possibility. I get that John Johnson was a tremendous member of one of the best defense with the Rams when he was with the Rams.
Yeah, it was one of the best. Yeah.
Okay. Regardless of all of that, the juice is not worth the squeeze to me when you're paying him as much as the Browns are. So it just makes too much sense. I think it's very much like Austin Hooper, and I'm glad, Andrew Berry's taken a bunch of heat for some of the things that, maybe some of his draft shortcomings and the way the defensive tackle room was. But one thing you cannot say about Andrew Berry, he does not get trapped into these contracts that he signed. And we've seen countless previous Browns organizations get stuck with guys and have this, like, they can get out of this John Johnson contract and save a lot of money doing so. Makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, it just doesn't add up. Andrew says he read that article. It was pretty good. I appreciate it. MC
Jacob
says
and I were at camp when
Jakeem
Grant tore his Achilles, and that was a sad day.
Yeah, I watched it. I think I was one of the first to notice it too, because I think some other people had seen it, but I was like tapping people around us. I was like, man, I think it was bad. It was a non-contact on an out route, and I was just like, he's going down. Oh, Roger wanted to plug. I'm gonna real quick. Roger said not to forget that the Dog Chug Takeover is tomorrow night with Jessica and Sherry. They'll be guest hosting and taking it over tomorrow night. And I guess Roger said to me earlier that he was just going to sit in the background and drink beer. And I'm not really sure how that's any different than any other episode of the Dog Chug, but like that's what he told me. So like,
Roger will give you a hell of a top 10 list. I can't wait. I'm super excited about. I did not know that they were doing the double guest host. Wow, that's going to be a show. I can't wait to see it.
It's going to be really good, and I'm looking forward to it. Is Anthony Walker? Yeah, I do believe Anthony Walker will come back. I do think that is part of it. Has that injury, was playing really, really well. Great leader, all those good things. I really appreciate it.
Because you mentioned JOK, which I am really excited about. But then I was thinking to myself, I was like, I wonder who that other linebacker will be. And honestly, the other two linebackers in this scheme, because I think that's one of your biggest questions. What do you think? Do you think there's a chance Taki comes back?
I mean, he wants to be back, and I think he would probably sign a very low contract to come back because he's coming off that injury. And if that's the case, I think that's great. Like I'm all about it. I like Taki. I wanted to extend him after this. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to extend him before he got hurt. I wanted him to come back before that. So I think that, I think it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer to bring him back, but you just got to make sure there's contingency plans because he's not going to be healthy week one. So
I understand.
All right, man. is it time for some playoffs?
Oh, that's what I was thinking. So last year we did a whole bracket with this, which ended up in me having a Mohawk and Jacob, because we tied.
Yeah.
We tied when we did this, and I don't remember what you did, Jacob.
I did have a Fu Manchu for that.
Oh
episode.
yeah, you had a Fu Manchu. Yeah, I had a Mohawk, which because last year I had a lot long hair.
A lot of hair.
But anyway, so we're a week in now, but there's still, I mean, every game is great. So we were thinking that we could talk a little bit about them and maybe pick some winners and see where we go.
See where we go, and maybe I don't know, do something embarrassing. We'll figure it out. We'll leave it up to you guys. Tell us what the loser has to do.
All right.
Okay, let's start Saturday games, man. January 21st, 4:30 game, first kickoff, Jaguars Chiefs. Listen, that Jaguars game was the wildest thing. Like, you know what? How many times have you said this year, based on other games, this is the wildest thing I've seen this year? Like that Minnesota game, that massive comeback.
Oh my God.
That was the wildest thing I'd ever seen. Well, this game was that Jags game was the wildest thing I ever seen. I was talking to my buddy today at work, and he had texted me during the game. He's like, "Man, Trevor Lawrence sucks," because he had just thrown his third or fourth interception when my buddy sent that, and he's like, "He sucks." He went to bed. My buddy legitimately went to bed, woke up, and was like, "What the heck happened?" Like, just what was that? What happened? Which is just fantastic. I love it. So Jags Chiefs. I think this is a close game. I think a lot of people are looking. It's like -8.5. I think is the line on that game, and I'm like, I'm going to take the Chiefs, but I'm going to take the Jags to cover. So if you're putting money on this game, I say take the Jags +8.5. But straight up, I'll take the Chiefs.
The Jaguars are such an interesting team. I think that they play really fast on defense. Trevor Lawrence sometimes looks like it could be the next one of the next great quarterbacks that everybody thought he was going to be, why he was the number 1 overall pick. And sometimes so it's been up and down with him. I still think Kansas City's going to win. I think that they have one of the best home field advantages in all of football, and they probably are able to make Trevor Lawrence look like a young quarterback playing in his first really hostile playoff environment. So give me the Chiefs.
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, did you know, also, we didn't talk about it. We kind of talked about it, but Jim Schwartz's first NFL job was under Bill Belichick in Cleveland in the early 90s.
So many trees start in Cleveland, and I
once heard that you're not a coach in the NFL till you get fired from Cleveland.
There was that viral to start the playoffs out. There was that picture of Johnny Manziel looking at Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel, and my heart hurt. And that's how I feel about that.
Yeah.
So anyway, moving on to our
Giants
AFC matchup. We've got Cincinnati and Buffalo. Far more difficult, in my opinion, to pick a winner between these two teams because neither one looked particularly dominant in their games against backup quarterbacks, right? Cincinnati, aside from that fumble they took back to the end zone, got shut out in the second half, and Buffalo was up 17-0, and then they narrowly won 34-31 against the third string Skylar Thompson.
And Josh Allen turned it over 5 times?
Oh, man.
3 or 4 times. He fumbled 3 times and threw 2 interceptions or something like that. It was just a number that I was like, I watched that game. I kept watching that game and I kept thinking, I don't know what the hell's going on here. I don't know. I picked them to, I thought they were going to win the AFC a couple of weeks ago. That's where I was with Buffalo. They're going to win the AFC. That's how it's going to be. I picked them to win the Super Bowl very early in the year.
Yes, you did.
I don't like this game at all. If you're betting, I wouldn't bet on this game. I would avoid this game, maybe do an over-under or something like that. I'll stick with my early pick. I'll stick with Buffalo. I think they have I think their defense is better. depends. Cincy's defense is nothing to be to sneeze at. That's a very good, very well coached unit over there as well. I like Josh Allen a little bit more than I like Joe Burrow, so I'll take the Bills.
I'm just nervous. You know what? For me, my biggest concern for Cincinnati is that they lost a bunch of offensive linemen in that game against Baltimore.
Yeah.
And so that, and then there's the question of will Von Miller play? I was actually reading stats that their defense was pressuring at more than double the rate when Von Miller was playing than when he's off the field, which is insane, especially at Von Miller's age. But I guess he's still incredibly effective. So there's a bunch of moving parts here. I'm similarly struggling because those Josh Allen turnovers were really weird, but the Cincinnati's offense just, and so if I have questions about both teams, I think I lean towards the team that is at home. So I'm going with you, and I think I'm taking Buffalo.
All right, let's move over to the NFC. The Giants and the Eagles. The Giants and the NFC East gets 3 teams into the playoffs. Mm-hmm. All 3 of them still alive. 3 of the 4 NFC teams in the playoffs right now are in the same division. Listen, Danny Dimes had himself a day. And don't get me wrong, the Vikings defense, not that great. But they didn't. I lost my parlay because they barely ran the ball with Saquon because Danny Dimes won that game. He was I think was he close to 400, over 300 throwing. I know he had like 70 or 80 rushing. Listen, the Giants' third string almost beat the Eagles in week 18, and Danny Dimes has got a hot hand. I know Jalen Hurts is there. I love A.J. Brown. I like Nick Sirianni. I think that's a good defense. They've got a good offensive line. Lane Johnson's supposed to be back. Give me the giant set of DeBalls and give me the New York Football Giants.
True story. I bet $10 on the Giants pre-playoffs to win the Super Bowl, to win 560. So we'll see because they've done it from the wild card spot before. I'm not going to guess the year but I remember they did.
Yeah, against the perfect Patriots. They beat the perfect Patriots as well.
Yes, they certainly did. I like Philly. I like that team. I like the home field advantage they have. I like their fans. And I think Jalen Hurts is fantastic. I like the Giants too. However, I can't. Philly's coming off a bye week. There's a lot to like about the Giants. I just don't think against a stronger offense that they are going to be able to keep up like they did against Minnesota. So give me Philadelphia.
All right. Final weekend game. The final game. I think it's the last game. Yeah, it's the last game of
this is the hardest one, I think.
Of the weekend. I don't think it is. Cowboys 49ers. I think the Cowboys, it was more about they were a good, not great team last night against a really bad team. I think the 49ers win it all. And I'm just not even a question. I do not. They've got, if 40-year-old Jason Peters is playing left tackle against that defensive line, and I don't know what Dallas's offensive line is going to look like. I know there's more injuries. They're shuffling people around. I know all that stuff. I don't think Dallas can score on that defense. And Brock Purdy is just good enough. Sometimes he's great. I don't think he's overall great, but like he can be great. They can elevate him. Brandon Ayuk is having one of the best seasons of a wide receiver you've not hearing get any credit. A lot of that has to do with other teammates, with Deebo Samuel being back and healthy, with George Kittle. But Ayuk he's feasting on having those other two there. Like he's a problem. They've got more weapons. Ooh, yeah. I think they win it all. I'm taking the 49ers.
I really kind of want to take Dallas. Dak was so confident against Tampa Bay. I know the 49ers defense is good. Is this Brock Purdy story going to keep on going? Is it really? I mean, he did some awesome things against Seattle. I like upsets. I'm picking. Give me Dallas.
Okay.
I'm taking them. I don't know. Everybody's sipping the 49ers Kool-Aid, and I know their defense is great, and Brock Purdy's been good so far, and they've got all these weapons on offense. But I just think at some point, this dude might look like a rookie quarterback. And maybe that's not even true because Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle's a wizard, which I still miss. But
you're a wizard, Harry.
I gotta have a little, gotta have a little difference here. I'm picking Dallas.
This is good of a place to end this off-season charade.
Okay, I like it.
Any, right?
Yeah, I mean, hey, we are chugging along. Just like we're at 900 subscribers on YouTube, we're over 90 episodes of the Barking Brown Show. It has been an honor. It's an honor to do this every week and to be able to talk to you all. So thank you for joining us. We love you both. From your resident 32-year-olds over here and my 66-year-old father today. This has been episode 91 of the Barking Brown Show. I'm Nick. He's Jacob. Go Browns.
Go Browns.